The Hayes Corporation's quarterly strategy session was always more about ego than economics, but this time they'd really outdone themselves. I paused at the entrance to the sleek boardroom in Seattle's tech district, watching my cousin Ethan place name tags with exaggerated care. He didn't even look up. "Oh, Sophie," he muttered. "The overflow space is down the hall. Storage room next to janitorial. We need this space for real decision makers." "You're not one of us anymore," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. I glanced down at my navy suit, Tom Ford, perfectly cut, and thought about the irony, about the folder in my briefcase that could upend everything. "Real decision makers," I repeated. "You wouldn't know one if they owned you," I thought, my anger simmering. "You know," he said smugly, "people who count." My Aunt Laura joined in, tugging at the sleeve of her emerald blazer. "Not part-time consultants like you. You're a nobody now," she added, her words sharp, dismissive. "Consultant? That's what they called me now. The family letdown who'd left Hayes Corp 10 years ago at 32 to find herself. You threw away your future," Laura had spat, her judgment final. They had no idea I hadn't just found myself. I'd built something bigger than all of them. Ethan smirked. "Hope you don't mind boxes. Storage is a little cramped lately, but I'm sure you can squeeze in beside the water heater. Stay out of our way," he warned, his tone cold, threatening. I thought of the message I'd received that morning. Confirmation that Peak Ventures had just acquired another 8% of Hayes Corp shares. My company now controlled 51% purchased quietly over 5 years through a labyrinth of holding firms. They had no idea that Peak Ventures was me. "The session starts in 20, Laura said, patting her clipboard like it contained national secrets. "We've got major partners flying in." She gave me a sideways glance. "I'm presenting the TechWave proposal myself." "You'd only ruin it," she said, her voice laced with disdain. I bit my lip to stifle a grin. TechWave was in negotiations with me directly. They just didn't know the woman behind Peak yet. This will shatter them, I thought, my resolve hardening. "How's the gig life treating you?" Ethan asked with faux sympathy. "Still working out of that tiny co-working space in Capitol Hill? Still scraping by?" he mocked, his smile cruel. That tiny space was actually the testing ground for one of my incubator ventures. My real headquarters, a 6-story innovation tower with an ocean view and rooftop helipad. "I manage," I said softly, lifting my briefcase. "You have no idea," I thought, my secret fueling my calm. "The storage room's that way," Laura said, waving a hand. "Just don't interrupt. Stay invisible," she ordered, her tone sharp, commanding. I nodded, walking toward the hallway. Not as the overlooked cousin they thought I was, but as the new majority owner of everything they were about to pitch. We have actual majority owner of everything they were about to pitch. We have actual business to discuss. "Unlike you," she sneered, her dismissal cutting deep. I nodded silently and stepped into the so-called storage room, pulling the door shut behind me. The space was cluttered, dim, and smelled faintly of dust and mildew. How fitting. A perfect reflection of how my family saw me. Forgotten, unwelcome, tucked away out of sight. "They'll regret this," I vowed, my anger a quiet fire. 10 years ago, I'd been where Aunt Laura stood now, at the front of the room, hailed as the next generation of leadership at Hayes Corporation. Back then, I believed in the company. I believed in legacy until I found the files. Environmental negligence disguised as cost-saving, dangerous shortcuts in manufacturing, labeled efficiency labor violations marked as non-issues. When I brought the documents to my uncle, he laughed and waved them away. "It's business, Sophie. Don't get sentimental. You're too weak for this," he'd said, his laughter cruel. "If this bothers you, maybe you're not cut out for this world. Leave if you can't handle it," he'd taunted, his words a challenge. So I left quietly, using the trust my mother had left me, money earned long before she ever married into the Hayes dynasty. I'd built Peak Ventures. The name was my tribute to her, Margaret Walsh, a woman who had once told me, "You don't have to inherit power to create it." "They'll never erase you," she'd promised, her voice fierce, guiding, and I had created it from scratch, slowly, quietly, and differently. Peak didn't cut corners. We invested in clean energy, ethical manufacturing, tech built with transparency. While Hayes Corp clung to its crumbling hierarchy, I expanded, buying into undervalued firms, shaping shaky industries, and positioning Peak as a silent giant. And now Hayes Corporation had bled, trusts were exiting, revenues flatlined. They needed rescue. They just didn't know the lifeline was coming from me. I settled between dusty boxes and old binders. Opening my laptop through the thin partition wall, I heard voices rising. Laura greeting partners, Ethan posturing with buzzwords. "Mr. Wave, we're thrilled about the direction of the proposal," she gushed. "This is our moment," she boasted, her confidence blind. I grinned. TechWave wasn't here for Hayes. They were here for Peak, for me. The same deal Laura thought she was negotiating had already been finalized under my name. My phone buzzed. From Lila. "Executive assistant team ready, proxy votes secured, board leadership aligned. Waiting on your signal." "They're finished," she texted, her tone electric with anticipation. I exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the flickering fluorescent light overhead. From the storage room of rejection, I was about to claim the seat they all thought was theirs. Another buzz, Lila. "Mr. Wave asks if you'd prefer he continued the charade through the entire meeting, or reveal you." Now I paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard, then typed back, "Let's see how it plays out, but make sure he doesn't sign anything Laura hands him." "Let them dig their grave," I added, my strategy set. The storage room door creaked open suddenly. My uncle's newest wife, Elise, 25 years his junior and dressed like she'd wandered off a runway, poked her head in. "Sophie, your uncle wants the doors shut, says your typing's distracting." "You're a nuisance," she snapped, her tone venomous. I gave a polite nod, wondering how she'd react when she found out her airtight prenup had been quietly acquired by one of Peak's legal affiliates, along with a thick file of surveillance photos from her yoga instructor. "You'll learn soon enough," I thought, my secret a weapon. Through the wall, I heard Uncle James begin. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming," he said, voice rich with practiced gravitas. "As you know, Hayes Corporation is currently exploring select partnership opportunities. We're unstoppable," he claimed, his arrogance deafening. "Partnership opportunities?" A sanitized phrase for investor lifelines. In reality, they were circling the drain. $250 million, 0 cents short of survival by quarter's end. Coincidentally, that was exactly what Peak Ventures was offering under very specific terms. I glanced at my screen. Hayes Corp stock had dipped another 2.5% since the market opened. Right on schedule. Laura's voice rang through the walls artificially bright as she launched into her proposal for TechWave, and with Mr. Wave's investment, she finished will be positioned to expand aggressively across the Pacific Northwest tech corridor. "We'll dominate," she declared, her delusion stark. "Actually," Mr. Wave's familiar voice cut in, "I'm not here for that proposal." The silence was instant. "I'm here to meet with the CEO of Peak Ventures." "The real power," he added, his voice clear, commanding. I could almost hear Laura's smile shatter. "I'm sorry," she faltered, "but this was arranged through Hayes." "You're mistaken," she stammered, her panic rising. "It was," Wave confirmed smoothly. "But Peak now holds a controlling interest in Hayes Corp, and in multiple vendors you rely on, including my own firm." "You've been outplayed," he said, his words a bombshell. "That's ridiculous," Uncle James snapped. "We'd know if someone was buying up our company. No one could touch us," he roared, his denial desperate. I stood, smoothing my blazer, and opened the storage room door. "Would you?" I said, stepping into view. "I said studies your missions audits were fabricated, or that your offshore contractors are violating labor laws, or that your clients have already signed with someone more accountable." "You've been blind," I declared, my voice steady, accusing. Every head in the room turned for the first time in years. They really saw me. Not as the forgotten niece in the corner, but as the woman who owned the floor beneath their feet. If you want to see what Sophie does next and how the board reacts when she takes her rightful seat, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of her quiet revenge. This is my time, I thought, my triumph imminent. Every head in the conference room snapped toward me. Laura's cheeks lost all color. Ethan dropped the silver-plated pen he always flaunted. Uncle James' face stiffened, caught between disbelief and mounting dread. He choked out. What? What are you talking about?" "This is impossible," he shouted, his voice trembling with shock. I offered a calm smile and stepped fully into the room. "Perhaps we should restart this meeting," I said smoothly. "You've underestimated me for too long," I added, my tone sharp, commanding. "It's rather rude to leave your majority shareholder in the storage closet." The silence was deafening. I strode confidently to the head of the table and set down my briefcase with a soft, deliberate click. "Peak Ventures," I began, enjoying the way James's jaw tightened with each syllable, "now holds 51% of Hayes Corporation's stock." "I own you now," I said, my words a stark truth. Dead silence. "We also control a majority stake in 3 of your 5 primary vendors. We've acquired your largest line of credit, and as of this morning, we've signed exclusivity agreements with over 80% of your top clients." "That's not possible," Laura stammered. "You're a nobody," she screamed, her composure shattered. "Preek is run by me," I finished, voice steady. "It has been since I left Hayes Corp 10 years ago. Not that any of you noticed. You were too busy padding numbers and chasing quarterly wins to see who was quietly buying your legacy out from under you. I've outsmarted you all," I said, my victory clear. Ethan found his voice first. "But you're just a consultant. You work out of that shared space downtown. You're nothing," he spat, his desperation raw. I smiled. "That's one of our R&D labs." I clicked open my laptop and connected to the boardroom's display. "My actual office is Emerald Tower, you know, the one that literally casts a shadow over this building? I've been watching you fail," I said, my tone cold, revealing. The screen lit up with performance charts. Declining revenue, rising legal risks, client attrition. "Let's begin," I said. "Since I left, Hayes Corp stock has fallen 65%. You're under EPA scrutiny and the Department of Labor is preparing subpoenas." "Now wait a minute," James began, voice rising. "You can't do this," he protested, his fear evident. "I am waiting," I cut in sharply. "Now while you were grooming Laura and Ethan to cover up violations and silence whistleblowers, I was building something better. I built an empire," I declared, my pride unshaken. Mr. Wave gave a small nod. "That's why our contract went to Peak. They do business right. Ethics don't pay salaries," Laura snapped, though her tone cracked. "You're delusional," she hissed, her defeat looming. "Actually," I advanced the slide, "they do. Peak's profit margins are 35% above industry standards because when you respect workers and the law, the returns respect you back." I passed around neatly prepared folders. "Inside, you'll find Peak's proposal for Hayes Corporation's future. We're prepared to inject $250 million, 0 cents in capital," I said evenly. "Exactly what you need to avoid insolvency." "I'm your only hope," I said, my voice firm, unyielding. Uncle James narrowed his eyes, his business instincts finally catching up. "Now, what do you want in return?" "Control," I replied. "Full operational authority. The Hayes family retains 20% ownership, but all decisions will now go through Peak Ventures board." "You answer to me now," I stated, my authority absolute. I paused. "Which means this company and this family is about to change." Ethan gave a weak laugh. "You're bluffing, Laura. Tell her she can't do this. He's lying," he pleaded, his panic rising. "She's not bluffing," Mr. Wave interjected. "Miss Walsh holds 51% of this company. She has legal control, and with proxy support, she has a mandate. She absolutely can. She's won," he said, his voice a final verdict. I advanced the presentation to the next slide. A brutal timeline of Hayes Corp violations, fines, lawsuits, OSHA investigations, EPA sanctions, a decade of rot. "The choice is yours," I said. "Accept our offer and let us rehabilitate this business, or let it collapse under the weight of your shortcuts. Choose wisely," I warned, my challenge clear. Laura's face turned pale. "You destroy your own family's legacy. You're a traitor," she accused, her voice breaking. "This isn't destruction," I replied. "This is restoration. Pete revives companies that have lost their way. We just happen to be starting with ours." "I'm saving you," I said, my mission unwavering. Uncle James stood slowly. The fire in his eyes hadn't dimmed, but it was tempered now by something like respect. "You planned this. All of it. The quiet exit, the shell corporations, the client poaching." "You're brilliant," he admitted, his awe reluctant. I met his gaze. "I learned from the best uncle. You taught me everything about winning. I softened. But not about how to win, that I learned from Mom. She'd be proud, I said, my voice steady, honoring her. He winced at her name. Margaret Walsh, his late sister, had been the only moral voice in the company. After her death, her values were erased from every boardroom decision. Until now. I slid the paperwork across the table. The documents need to be signed today. Your creditors are circling. So is the EPA and the press. You're out of time, I said, my urgency pressing. Laura clung to James' arm. You can't let her do this. We'll find another investor. We'll fight you, she threatened, her desperation futile. Can you? I raised a brow. Check your phones. All around the room, screens lit up. A push notification from Forbes. Peak Ventures declares majority ownership of Hayes Corp. Immediate restructuring expected by closing bell. Your world is mine now, I thought, my victory sealed. They'd be lucky if anyone bid on their nameplate. The room broke into chaos. Voices overlapping, phones buzzing, eyes darting. Ethan sank into his chair, pale and hollow. Laura just stared. James held the contract in both hands, silent, and for once he read every word. His hands trembled slightly. You'll keep the Hayes name, Uncle James asked, last. The company name? Yes, I said, but not the practices that poisoned it. It's a new era, I declared, my vision bold. I met his eyes without wavering. It's time for Hayes Corporation to stand for more than profit at any cost. He exhaled slowly and nodded. Then, with a reluctant reverence, he reached for the pen. Wait. Laura's voice cracked through the tension. What about us? You can't erase us, she screamed, her fear raw. Your positions are secure, I said evenly. If you're willing to learn a new way of doing business, Peak offers excellent training in ethical governance and responsible leadership. Prove you're worth it, I challenged, my expectations firm. I paused. Or you can walk away with your 20% stake and figure out what comes next. You'd really fire your own family? Ethan asked, stunned. You'd betray us? He accused, his voice weak. I'd really expect my family to earn their positions, I corrected, just like every other Peak employee does. No more handouts, I said, my standards clear. The contracts were signed within the hour. As the boardroom slowly cleared, Mr. Wave approached me with a quiet handshake. Brilliantly done, he said. Your mother would be proud. You've changed the game, he added, his respect genuine. Glanced toward the corner where Laura, Ethan, and James stood in stunned silence, eyes hollow, their world rewritten in an afternoon. A small part of me pioused them, but a larger part knew this was necessary. Not just for the business, but for justice. The next few months were transformational. Hayes Corporation's darkest practices were dismantled one by one. Fair wages and employee protections were prioritized. Sustainability was embedded into every department. Environmental audits weren't just passed. They set new benchmarks. To her credit, Laura surprised everyone. She enrolled in ESG certification programs, attended policy workshops, and earned a genuine role in Peak's corporate responsibility division. Ethan took longer to adapt, but eventually found his place in community engagement. His charm finally served a purpose beyond distraction. It began rebuilding trust with partners and the public. James stepped down as CEO, but remained on as a senior advisor. In time, he came to accept that what I built wasn't an attack on his legacy, but an elevation of it. 1 year later, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office in Emerald Tower, watching the city glow below. In the distance, the Hayes Corp building stood tall, its old logo now paired with Peak's ethical business certification emblem. There was a knock. Your uncle's here for the quarterly review, Lila said. And Jennifer just joined him. She brought some notes on the new worker safety initiatives. Send them in, I said with a smile. We're building something real, I thought, my pride immense. As they entered my office, not a storage room, I reflected on how far we'd come. Legacy isn't about what you inherit. It's about what you choose to build. Ready to go over the numbers? James asked, looking genuinely eager. You've changed us, he said, his voice warm, grateful. I gestured toward the round table where every seat held equal weight. Always, I replied. That's what happens when everyone is treated like they matter. Hayes Corporation now thrived under Peak's leadership, proof that ethics and profits can re-exist. And if anyone ever suggests putting someone in the storage room again, they are reminded of the day the consultant turned out to own the building. I rose from the shadows, I thought, my legacy secured. Sometimes the best view of success starts in the shadows. You just have to know when to open the door. If you've made it to the end of my story, thank you. Truly. I didn't share this for applause. I shared it because I know I'm not the only one who's ever been underestimated, sidelined, or told to stay quiet in the storage room. If something in my journey spoke to you, I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment below. Tell me what part hit home, or how you've faced your own version of being dismissed. We grow stronger by sharing, and if you believe in standing up for yourself even when your own family doesn't see your worth, then subscribe. Not for me, but for you. For the reminder that your voice matters, your work matters, and that patience combined with purpose is a force no one can ignore forever. Here's my advice. Don't wait for permission to build something meaningful. Use the silence, the rejection, the doubt, and turn it into fuel. Let every locked door push you to build your own, and when the time is right, open it. Step through it. Claim what's yours, not out of vengeance but out of truth. We deserve more than survival. We deserve to lead. Let's keep rising.